All right, guys. So, interesting and positive story here to report to you. I do think it's fair to say this story is too little too late, but they also say better late than never, right? And I think that's true as well. So this is in Mediaite. They say, New York Times and Euro outlets call for U.S. to drop Julian Assange charges in scathing letter. Quote, publishing is not a crime. Okay, so here's what they say. The New York Times joined a handful of European news outlets on Monday to call for the U.S. government to drop charges against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, along with The Times, The Guardian, Le Monde, Der Spiegel, and El País, condemned Assange being charged under the Espionage Act. In a joint letter, The Times noted its own history with Assange, recalling a series of revelations that made headlines around the world. The joint letter reads, quote, Cablegate, a set of 251,000 confidential cables from the U.S. State Department, disclosed corruption, diplomatic scandals, and spy affairs on an international scale. In the words of the New York Times, the documents told the unvarnished story of how the government makes its biggest decisions, the decisions that cost the country most heavily in lives and money. Even now in 2022, journalists and historians continue to publish new revelations using the unique trove of documents. So in other words, look, this is journalism. You might not like it, but this is journalism. And remember, guys, it was Julian Assange who gave us that, what was called that collateral murder video, where Chelsea Manning gave this to Julian Assange. Julian Assange released it to the public. What we saw was U.S. soldiers in Iraq. They killed journalists, circled around, and killed the first responders. And we're laughing about it as they did it. And this is just one of probably many examples of the U.S. committing war crimes. Now, that's something that happened with our money as taxpayers in our name. The American people have a right to know about that so they can pressure the government to not do that in the future, to bring about justice and to not do that. And we can't fix it if we don't even know it's happening, if they hide anything that happens that makes them look bad. So this is what a journalist is supposed to do. And it's brave because you know you're going to get the ire of the government who's trying to keep this stuff under wraps. This is exactly like the Pentagon Papers, Vietnam, Daniel Ellsberg, Mike Gravel. This is exactly what it's like. They were like, hey, we need to leak this information showing that the U.S. military is doing Agent Orange and napalm and bombing innocent villages in Vietnam. We had to learn that. Because again, that's happening with our money in our name. And so they tried to hide that. No. Show the people, let the people react, and this is how a democratic government is supposed to work. We see what you're doing. We know it's fucked up. We want to put an end to it. Mass movements in the streets, pressure on politicians, voting for people who don't support it, etc. So here's what they say. The letter also notes that some of the editors and journalists from these outlets are critical of Assange's conduct, but still feel the charges against him are unwarranted. So this is the classic argument we hear all the time. Hey, look, even if you don't like the guy, even if you think he's an asshole, the bottom line is what happened was not criminal. This group of editors and publishers, all of whom had worked with Assange, felt the need to publicly criticize his conduct in 2011 when unredacted copies of the cables were released. And some of us are concerned about the allegations in the indictment that he attempted to aid in computer intrusion of a classified database. But we come together now to express our grave concerns about the continued prosecution of Julian Assange for obtaining and publishing classified materials. So the unredacted claim is the thing I've heard before as well. They say, look, if you're going to release this stuff, you at least have to go through it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure you're not releasing anything that's actually going to cause damage. The response to that is, but there is no evidence of any wrongdoing happening as a result of this information being leaked. So there were no spies that were targeted. Sometimes you have, little sycophants to U.S. empire come out and say that is what happened, but there's no evidence of that whatsoever. No evidence of that at all. So, and also, look, it's not like he released the nuclear codes or some shit where everybody would say, you know what, the state does have a legitimate reason to keep that under wraps. The fact of the matter is, the classification system is abused to no end. They say, oh, make this top secret, make this classified, if it just embarrasses the government and it's abused. And he was helping to reverse that and say, no, this stuff shouldn't be classified. We're going to release it. Assange was arrested in London in 2019, and he's been held in custody since. He is facing extradition to the U.S. and could be facing more than 170 years behind bars. The joint letter blasts the use of the Espionage Act, which has never been used to prosecute a publisher in the past. Quote, this indictment sets a dangerous precedent and threatens to undermine America's First Amendment and the freedom of the press. The letter reads, the declaration from the outlets ends by offering a simple line. Publishing is not a crime. Now, let me remind everybody. The Obama administration, no fan of whistleblowers, right? even they said when they looked into this case, we simply cannot prosecute Julian Assange. Because if you do, you are disregarding the First Amendment. You are violating the Constitution in a very clear way. And not only would you have to go after Julian Assange, you also have to go after the New York Times. You also have to go after the Washington Post. You also have to go after a number of reputable, established, elite outlets. And they said, we can't do it. It would set way too authoritarian of a precedent to do it. But under Trump, they were charging him. Under Biden, the charges are still there. Drop it, drop it, drop it, drop it, drop it. Credit to these outlets. It's very late, but at least they did it. It's important to have these powerful voices on the proper side. And let's hope it comes to fruition. Drop the charges immediately. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.